2021 could look very different for us.
Yeah.
Some really nice IT support. So
yeah. And I guess
hello, everybody. My name is Nick Cox, and I am a workplace well-being specialist with the Wellbeing Partners. And I'd like to thank you for attending our youth wellness webinar, addressing the challenges of remote learning. Today we have Claire Brown, our youth wellness coordinator, presenting on ways to make remote learning easier and healthier for your child. We do welcome your questions, and you can submit those via the chat function on the menu of your Zoom, and we will answer those questions at the end of the presentation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Claire.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Yep, we're excited to have all of you here with us today. Like Nick said, I'm going to be talking about how to support your remote learners and their physical and emotional health during remote learning days. I am the Youth Wellness Coordinator for the Wellbeing Partners, and I work with schools, after-school programs, and community organizations to help support youth wellness in our area. I'm also a professor of early childhood education here at College of St. Mary in Omaha and online at Aspen University. Previously, I was a teacher for Omaha Public Schools. Education and childhood wellness are really where my heart is. So I'm excited today to talk about how we can support children in those different ways. So our agenda here today, we're going to talk about 3 different categories: physical activity, screen time, and mental health, and then how those different things affect a child's learning and how we can support them in those different ways. To start, I'd like to know how old your children are in order to kind of help gauge our group today. But before we launch that poll, I want to say that I'm going to use the terms today, parents and children. And I want to be clear that I mean parents and children as inclusive of all caregivers and family structures. So that's moms, dads, grandparents, step-parents, adoptive parents, foster parents, adults caring for children for a family or friend, whoever you are. I'm happy you're here today, and this information is for you. So when I say parents, I'm talking to you and whatever kind of family structure that is for your family. So with all of that in mind, I see Claudia is working on our poll here. I'd like you to just mark down how old your children are. And you might even have to check multiple boxes for multiple kids in different categories, and that's fine too. So as soon as lovely Claudia is ready, we will launch that poll. And just go ahead and mark down how old your children are. Thank you, Claudia. All right, a few more seconds here to get those results in. If you're just joining us, it's how old your children are as we talk today about remote learners. All right, I'll do one more minute. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can all see these results yet, but it looks like we've got most of us within 10 to 15-year-olds, some younger, 5 to 10, some more on the 15 to 18 side. So thank you for that information. And we can go ahead and continue on to talk about physical activity. So how many of us can feel our brain power just like slipping away after a full day of Zoom, or prior to Zoom, a full day of sitting in meetings or computer work? Research in brain science shows us the profound impact that physical activity has on the brain. By getting the blood pumping, we can wake the brain up for learning. Without the opportunity for physical activity, your child isn't learning as much. The brain scan that you see here is from a study done by Dr. C. Hillman, and it was completed while 2 groups of students took the same test. One group, shown on the right, took the test after 20 minutes of just walking. And you can clearly see the difference that it made to the activity in their brains. What has happened with remote learning is that children have largely lost their movement breaks during their school days. They no longer have to walk all the way down the hallway to go to the class bathroom break. They no longer get to walk to specials within the school building. And most challenging, they no longer enjoy a class recess on remote learning days. We'll be talking today about how you can mitigate the effects of this lack of physical activity and its impact on your child's learning. And you can always consider your own brains as well, because much of this is applicable to us as adults as well. And so if you feel your brain starts slipping away during our webinar today, please get up and move around so that you can be fully engaged with the learning today. So how much physical activity is actually needed for a child? The answer is 60 minutes, but that should be considered an absolute minimum, as many children truly need quite a bit more. Toddlers on average need 180 minutes of physical activity a day, and that's no surprise to anyone who's ever cared for a toddler. Your own children are all going to be different in what their bodies actually need, so you can kind of think about them as we're talking today, but consider that 60 minutes as the minimum range. We would hope that children get about half of their physical activity during the school day. So again, at a bare minimum, that's at least 30 minutes during school. The other 30 minutes we hope is coming from physical activity after school, playing in the backyard, walks with the family, or an after school sport or activity. I'd like you to consider your child's remote learning day. And do you think they're getting their full 30 minutes of good, active physical activity? If the answer is yes, that's awesome, but stay with me because we'd like them to get really even a little bit more. If the answer is no, then let's figure out how to make that happen for your child, because in order for them to be their best learner, it really is necessary that they're getting those minutes in. So to talk about how to get those minutes in, I'm going to start first with active breaks. These are ways that you can help your child use breaks in their learning as an opportunity for physical activity. Consider again your child's remote learning schedule, and we're going to have a poll coming up for you to answer this question. How many times during the day does your student get a break from their learning? So include a scheduled bathroom break, recess breaks, lunch breaks, anytime when they're not expected to be in front of their screen as a break. And once you see that poll, you can go ahead and mark down how many breaks. Oops, no polls. Okay, no worries about that. So think in your own mind then, how many breaks does your child get? 1 or 2 breaks, 3 to 4, 5 or 6 or more. Consider for yourself how many breaks your child is getting. If your number is low, so on that lower end, 1 to 2, maybe even 3 to 4 breaks, it might be something to discuss with your child's teacher. You can advocate for active breaks and find out what kinds of physical activity might be integrated into your child's remote learning day already that the whole class is doing together. So for example, you may not see very many opportunities for breaks during the child's day, but your teacher might be able to say that, well, actually we do a big group song and dance every day before literacy time, something like that that would allow your child to be up and active with the whole class rather than as in the actual break. You can also consider work times that may not be an official break, but might give your child a chance to step away from the screen and do some physical activity while the teacher is working with different groups of students. So after the presentation today, when you get home, I'd like you to identify, and hopefully with your child, if they're old enough, 3 or 4 breaks in their day in which they can do a planned active break. These don't need to be long, even 5 minutes is good or 10 is better. But you want to find some times during the day that you can plan to have an active break, and then create a list of possible active breaks that your child can choose from. And those are the ideas that we'll be sharing with you today. These can be written down as you can use or images for a child who's not reading. And some of the ideas might require a little bit of setup. But as we talk today, I want you to think about having those items ready to go at the beginning of each day. And your child can have what they need next to the computer so that when the break comes, they don't need to come to you. They can just jump right into the physical activity. So what you see here are just some really simple ideas for very easy active breaks. These can be done with little to no prep for you or your child. Activities like these provide just enough physical activity to kickstart your child's brain so that they're ready for learning, which is taking advantage of their break time and more closely emulating what would be happening at school. Going out to recess, walking to the cafeteria, PE class, etc. If your child is old enough, they can help you create a list of simple things like this that they could do during breaks, because often our children have the best ideas. These breaks, however, probably aren't the most exciting or the most engaging. And you might have even thought, no way is my 10-year-old going to run up and down the stairs during break time, and that's okay. We want physical activity to be enjoyable for kids, not a chore or an obligation. So you might need to get creative to find breaks that your child will look forward to and benefit from. You also may need to be a little more relaxed on the rules in your home, and this is tricky. In your home, it may be absolutely never okay to jump on the couch or slide down the back of the couch or take the cushions off the couch to make lily pads for frogs to jump on, right? I challenge you to consider if there are rules in your home that might be okay to break. We can even coach our kids on this so that as the need arises, we can change the rules in order to allow for some more exciting breaks. So for example, this is a special break today. Usually we do not jump on the couch, but today it's an option. So after school today, we're gonna go back to the no jumping on the couch rule, but for your active break today, you can choose to do this activity. With a little coaching, you might be surprised about how flexible children can be with changing rules and how engaging changing the rules are to your child for the sake of physical activity. So here are some more creative active break ideas. And as we talk about these, I want you to consider some items that you have in your own home that might make for engaging active breaks. I'm going to share 2 examples here, but there are so many more that you come up with. And the person with the best ideas is often your child. So brainstorm together, use Pinterest, and use some of the resources that we'll be sharing with you following this presentation to come up with some fun ideas. Again, these are breaks that you would have already set up before the school day and already told your child how to use. So today, when you have a break, you can choose to run the stairs, do some dancing, or do this balance beam activity. And here's how it works. So first here, I have this 2x4 that we use often at my home. There are so many things you can do with it. But here my daughter is using it like a balance beam in the first picture. In the second picture, she is swinging from it as it is elevated. I have it lifted up on our couch and then on top of a towel on the coffee table so that it's level and she can pull her body up and kind of swing on it. We also really enjoy using it as a teeter-totter by putting a brick in the middle so that she can balance on both sides. You can see that each activity is using different muscle groups within her body and engaging her body in different ways, but it's still something really fun and very active. Some more examples here are using a laundry basket. Again, something we all probably already have in our home sitting around. In the top photo, my nephew is surfing. The basket is on top of a pillow that he's standing on. This is a great ab workout, even for adults. I think it's pretty fun. You can use 2 pillows to make more of a challenge. And you can place it close to something like a chair or a coffee table so your child can kind of hold on as they get in and out of the basket. In the second photo, he's pushing my niece around in the laundry basket, which is fun for both children. This can also be done with a stack of big books or some heavy toys if you don't have extra children lying around. And this really big muscle work is great for growing bodies and it gets that blood moving. And you can see and imagine here 5 minutes of this and he's done and ready to sit back down and re-engage in his learning. There are also some really wonderful options for active breaks online. Of course, your child benefits from taking a break from the screen. So I would suggest that these on-screen breaks are used very sparingly. However, there are some really wonderful ones out there. These are a few of my favorites, but in that resource list coming to you after the presentation, we have some more ideas and some links to these different resources for you for on-screen breaks. Another good option is to provide some activity while your child is engaged in learning. So rather than thinking that this is a break time, we're thinking about ways we can build activity into the sitting and learning and listening. The photo that you see here is of something called a kick band, and it's just what it sounds like. You can purchase these online, or they can be made with an exercise resistance band by just tying it onto the bottom of a chair. Other suggestions are allowing your child to sit on a yoga ball for learning. You can create a standing desk, even just by popping the screen up on some books as they can stand at the counter. Other suggestions are to allow your child to lay on the floor while learning so that they're on their stomach and propped up on their arms. All of these things will engage different muscle groups and keep your child's brain awake and their bodies engaged. And especially if your child is cycling through different positions throughout the day, you'll be able to have a more active learning brain. Another good option is fidget toys. And we're gonna think right now, if you just kind of freeze your body, look at your hands and do you have something in your hands that you're fiddling with? For most of us, the answer is probably yes, because everybody loves to fidget, right? And it helps us listen. Lean into that with your child and provide helpful fidgets to help keep their brain engaged, even in that small motor physical activity. Things like Play-Doh or better clay and even silly putty can engage muscles in the hands, which supports writing skills. Some children like to fiddle with more sensory items, like having a small Tupperware of sand or rice by the screen that they can put their fingers in. On my kitchen table here, where I have most of my Zoom meetings, I actually have a decorative box that's filled with split peas, dried split peas. And that's where my fingers are for most of my meetings. I stay engaged that way, and I have some sensory input by having my fingers fiddling with something there. Helps keep my attention. Fidget toys can be bought online. There's so many different options to talk to your child about what might be helpful for them and find some good small motor physical activity opportunities as well. We're going to move in next to screen time. If you have questions about physical activity, please go ahead and put those in the chat, and we will come back around and answer questions at the end. If you have ideas or things that are working great for your child at home in regards to physical activity, we would love to share those out as well. So please also type those in, and we'll go through those together at the end of the presentation. So jumping into screen time, it is not a mystery that screen time is bad for kids. We hear that all the time. Nobody's surprised by that. But it is a challenge to reduce screen time, especially with remote learning. And one of the biggest tools to help reduce your child's screen time is to be able to talk with them about why they need to monitor their screen usage. Having these conversations and including your child, if they're old enough, in setting those limits, make them feel like part of the conversation, like they have some control over the situation, rather than this just being another rule that's imposed on them. Share with your child that screen time affects brain development and that too much screen time is not healthy for their brains. The image that you see here is showing what happens when children spend excessive amounts of time in front of a screen. I'm not going to go into detail because my area of expertise is not reading MRIs, but the experts who took these scans concluded that screen time does several things to the brain. So I'll kind of outline that for you here. First, it atrophies gray matter, and gray matter is good. We don't want to lose that. Second, it compromises the integrity of the white matter, which can create challenges with communication and emotional control. It reduces the cortical thickness, which impacts cognition abilities. It impairs cognitive functioning, so that's task management, problem solving, etc. And it impacts craving and dopamine functions. All of these results together look a lot like behavioral challenges, emotional outbursts, focus challenges, etc. By sharing age-appropriate information like this with your child, they can be a part of their own health choices and understand that they have skin in the game, so to speak, in their screen time. It's also important to differentiate with your child academic screen time versus recreational screen time. We can all probably agree that we'd rather not be banking this webinar into our screen time hours for the day, but with the current situation, we don't really have any other options, and neither do our children with remote learning. We don't want our children to feel guilty for the extra screen time that they're getting or worried about the effects that it's having on them. Rather, we want them to see and understand that the additional academic screen time means that we want to prioritize non-screen recreational activities. Additionally, conversations should be had about social screen time. There are big differences in brain engagement when it comes to a FaceTime call with grandma versus just scrolling on Instagram. Help your child prioritize good social interactions via technology with family and friends that can't be seen in person right now. And even though that might mean more screen time in total. Another thing to think about is rewards. And while it's definitely common practice to use screen time as a reward, and I don't want anyone to feel guilty for having done this, I would like you to encourage you to not make screen time your go-to reward, and especially try to avoid using it as a reward for physical activity, as in you can have 30 minutes on your iPad after you go for a walk. These kind of situations can create poor relationships between your child and physical activity, equating it to a chore or an obligation rather than the healthy lifestyle choice that they want to make for their own good. Instead of treating screen time as a reward or a do this and then you can have screen time, help your child find a balance between their time on the screen and their time away from the screen. For example, making observations like, You've been in front of the screen for a while now. I see your shoulders are all slumped down. Or asking questions like, how are your eyes feeling? Mine always start to ache when I've been on the screen this long. These allow your child to self-evaluate and decide for themselves what their bodies might need. With younger children, you can avoid the reward conundrum by simply setting hard and fast rules when it comes to screen time. We watch one episode of Wildcrats and that's all. Or you get 20 minutes of iPad time while I cook supper and that's it. Nothing has to be done in exchange for the screen time. That's just all that's available to them. The other side of the screen time coin is in providing children with engaging activities that aren't on the screen. And this will help them self-elect to reduce their own screen time. These can be old classics like family board game nights, cooking dinner together, doing crafts, etc. And there are also great opportunities to build in some physical activity here through more active family games. We'll have some ideas on the resource document if you're looking for some support in that area. Finally, we're going to wrap up with mental health and how we can support mental health in children. This is a topic that we could truly talk all day about. Rather than doing that during this presentation, I want to leave you with a few guiding principles to your child's mental health and then connect you to some more resources if you'd like to take a deeper dive, if that's an interest to your family. First, it may seem helpful to minimize the complaints that your child is making or play down the situation. Try instead to empathize. So for example, instead of saying, at least you can talk to your friends, when I was in school, we didn't have cell phones. You can try saying, I wouldn't like remote learning either when I was your age. Or, well, don't you think it's hard for me to be online in meetings all day too? We can say, this is not easy, but you're doing a great job. Second, be vulnerable and honest and open with your children about the current situation, but provide hope and confidence in the experts, even if it doesn't necessarily reflect your own genuine feelings. So we can say, I don't know when this will end, but so many people are working hard to make it safe for school to go back to normal. Third, focus on connection with your child now more than ever. You are the secure base from which they relate all other experiences, and a strong emotional connection to you at this time will go a far way in their sense of stability. Finally, as parents, we need to expect emotional setbacks, tantrums, meltdowns, because our children's world is upside down and it's been that way for kind of a while. There was a meme going around a few weeks ago and it said something like, whenever I feel myself losing my cool with my third grader, I remember that one day in March, he left school and still hasn't been back to see his friends, and that most adults would lack the skills needed to fully process that. When our children melt down, whether that is to the floor in a 3-year-old or slamming doors and calling names in a 14-year-old, we need to meet that meltdown with compassion and empathy, knowing that this is simply the way their brains are handling this very challenging time. As we've said, we've got lots of resources headed your way, lots of opportunities to connect with mental health professionals in our area if that is a need that your family is experiencing. It will also include information about childhood physical activity needs, lots of more practical ideas for ways to help your kids be active, and support for screen time and all of those things. So look out for that document coming through to your inbox soon. Now we've got some time for questions. So let's take a look and see if we had any questions come through the chat. Let's see, Nick, are you with us?
I am here. I'm looking at the chat right now. I don't see anything yet. So if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat feature.
As those questions are coming through, and like we talked about earlier, if you have any ideas about good things that are working for you guys, please share those too. I do have a little brainstorming activity that we can kind of work through briefly together. So I see that not everyone has access to a mic, and that's just fine. You can participate in the chat, but if you would like to unmute yourself to participate verbally, you're welcome to do so. If you want to turn your cameras on, that's also welcome. But I'd like to consider some common household items that we could turn into some fun and engaging active breaks for students. So think back to those examples with the 2x4 and the laundry basket. And I'm going to share some objects, and I like to hear some ideas that what could you do with that object to help your child have a creative, interesting, active break. So for the first one, we're going to say a couch. How could you use your couch to have an active break?
Can build a slide from the couch cushions.
Yes.
For people to slide down from.
Yes, that's great. Slide from the couch cushions. If you have like a split level home like I do, that couch cushion will slide down the small section of stairs pretty nicely too, and that's really fun. Any other ideas for a couch? Okay, let's try one more. How about a pillowcase? What could we do with a pillowcase to help our kids be active? Nick, do you have any ideas?
I was thinking, yeah, like throwing it up and trying to catch it, or
Yeah,
jumping over it back and forth through some type of timed game like that.
yeah, that's great. A lot of times we don't want to have balls thrown around in our homes, but there are lots of things like a pillowcase or a tea towel that kids can throw around and still get the same physical activity without the risk of knocking stuff off the walls. Pillowcases are also great for like the potato sack races. Kids can hop around in those really well. You can have kind of the same idea and do like a scooting race. So if you sit, you know, get a pillowcase up and then sit down and kind of inchworm your way along. That's a great ab workout as well for kids. Any other ideas anybody would like to share? Feel free to type in the chat as well.
You took my idea, so no.
Your idea?
One. Yes.
Sorry, Claudia.
Good.
It was a good one.
I like that pillowcase, the gunny sack race. So that's a good one, especially if you have two of them at home.
Yeah, yeah, it's great when we can have our kids compete against each other. And if you only have one child at home and maybe you're home doing some, work from home remotely, it's great to get involved with them too. If they can't race a sibling, race with yourself. We all need those breaks physically, and to take 5 minutes and have a pillowcase race with our child really doesn't cut into our days that much, but it feeds into their relationship with us, and it allows them to really get that physical activity in. Well, thank you all for your participation today and for joining us. We'll be sending that resource document along to your inboxes soon. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is youthwellness@thewellbeingpartners.org. And we also invite you to follow us on Facebook. We have our main Facebook page, The Wellbeing Partners, which I'm sure all of you already see in regards to our worksite wellness work. But if you'd like to be following our youth work and how we can support your family and your family's wellness needs and the work that we're doing for youth in the community, we'd love to have you follow the youth page as well. It is the Wellbeing Partners-Youth. So thanks all for your time today, and we hope to see you in a future webinar again soon.
Thank you, everybody.